My family's van got a flat tire in the middle of the night on Interstate 95 as we were leaving the city of Miami. I was 5 years old and traveling with my mother, my grandfather, my brother, and my father, who was driving when the tire blew out. It was in the 1980s. When the tires blew out, we all got a little scared. For some reason, my father kept driving even though we were traveling at high speed. Eventually, the tires blew and we were left pulling the tires, which were throwing sparks down the highway in the middle of the night. I remember the tension in the car turned to fear because something was wrong. When I was older, I was told that my father saw a man in the middle of the road throw a strip of nails stuck to something in the middle of the road, which my father could not avoid. It turns out that people were using this method to rob and kidnap drivers on the road in the middle of the night. My father somehow realized what was going on and responded accordingly by not stopping to change the tire for several miles. Fortunately, we had full spares, changed both tires several miles down the road, and made it home safe and sound. My family didn't have their car stolen, and who knows what else, just because my father rolled with blown tires. A week before my 10th birthday, I went to the corner store with a $5 bill and bought a jar of salsa for my mother. On the way home, a man I had never seen before approached me and started talking. "Hello," he said cheerfully. "My name is Dr. Ramsy, and I'm a pediatrician. Do you know what a pediatrician is?" I remained silent without answering and fervently hoped he would take it as a sign that he should leave me alone. However, niceties were not his forte because he continued to talk to me. "Your parents are looking for a pediatrician for you. Of course, you are almost a big girl. Soon you will need another kind of doctor, won't you? It's okay, they can take you with me until then. What's your name? You have very nice hair." I was going to buy some pacifiers for the candy container in my office. "Do you like pacifiers?" Luckily, we were getting close to my house, so I ran forward, climbed the back steps, and entered through the kitchen door. I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of a very long and frightening encounter. It wasn't long before Dr. Ramsy started showing up. At first, he seemed pretty benign, at least for a child. He spent most days smiling and waving. I told my mother about it, and she said that maybe he was just a very jovial neighbor. But then the phone calls started. My father called me into the living room and sat me down. He asked me about the day Dr. Ramsy followed me home, and I talked to him. He told me there was no problem, but I had to tell him the truth. I replied that as soon as I exchanged words with him, and he asked me if I was sure. I said yes again. "Then how do you know his name?" This got me thinking. Turns out that wasn't the only thing he knew. He also knew my sister's name. Soon neither my sister nor I could answer the phone. He was calling several times a day. At first, neither of us knew what he was saying. Then one night, one of my brothers told us that he was telling my parents that he was going to hurt me and later my sister. Things got complicated later. My father had called the police, but since this was before there were anti-harassment laws, there wasn't much they could do. They told my parents to call if he tried anything. My father had to call a friend of his from the past who happened to be a policeman. For the next month, my father's friend accompanied me to school. Suddenly, life as I knew it stopped. I couldn't go to school alone. I couldn't play outside. I couldn't go to the grocery store alone. When I was completely denied access, things escalated. That's when he also started threatening my sister. One afternoon, my sister, two of my brothers, my mother, and I were in the kitchen. One of my brothers saw someone in the garage. They had seen him too. Dr. Ramsy ran out of the garage, chased by my brothers. They ran to Copyrigth Park, where he got lost in the trees. My parents called the police again, but got nothing. The only information they had was a description and a name that was almost certainly false. A couple of weeks later, we woke up to find our dog hanging from the side porch. She was a beautiful German Shepherd. We were devastated. The police said there was no proof it was him and did nothing about it. Meanwhile, his phone calls became more informative. He would talk about who was in the house and who wasn't. If my brother said my father was in the house, he would tell him who was really in the house. He also talked about our own house, about the kitchen window that he could easily open with a knife from the outside, even when it was locked, and about the French doors that connected the storeroom to the side porch, and how the lock could be discovered from the outside if you moved just enough. That night my father put some carpenter's nails in the bottom of the doors until he could order new locks. Unfortunately, one day we would be left alone, and that day came. My parents had to go to a company event at work. My older brothers were at the rink. My sister was on the phone with her best friend. My little brother was on the floor sleeping. I was watching an animated series. It was late and suddenly the top door of the French doors opened inwards, and in a few milliseconds before the nails at the bottom pushed them back, I could see her silhouette. My brother dropped the phone and we ran up the stairs. Halfway up we realized our little brother was still asleep on the living room floor. As quietly as we could, we went downstairs to look for him. We went into our bedroom and didn't turn on the light so we could see outside. We looked out the window and could see someone standing at the back door. I knocked loudly on the door. "What do you want?" my sister asked through the window. She stepped back and said, "Is this the Marcy residence? I have to deliver a pizza. Can you come to the door?" My brave sister taunted him by declaring that she wasn't stupid, that she could see didn't have a pizza, and was calling the police. The silhouette walked away from the door. Before long, my brothers came home. We told them what had happened and walked around the yard looking for him. We had given up on calling the police because it never did any good. So we went back inside, each of us with a knife from the kitchen, just in case. At the end, one of my brothers went to the kitchen to get a bowl of cereal for a snack. You know that feeling you get when you feel like someone is watching you? I kept looking around the kitchen, through the door that leads from the dining room to the windows. He couldn't see anything, but he kept feeling eyes on him, so he moved closer to the door to try to get a better look. He moved a step closer, then closer again, until he was level with the door. Then she looked through the peephole. There, on the other side of the window pane, was Dr. Ramsy smiling back at her. He turned to call out for my older brothers, and when he looked again, he was gone. They went out again to look for him, but he was nowhere to be seen. A couple of weeks later, he was at school, and we went out to the playground during recess. He was swinging on the swing set when I saw the familiar blue Ford Galaxy slowly drive by. There it was, smiling and waving. I ran to the teacher and told her. The school had told her everything, so she took me inside right away and called my mother. Earlier that day, my mother had received a call from the school office asking her to verify that my father was coming to pick me up, since he had called to say he was on his way. But it turns out my father had said no such thing. Not long after that, I woke up one night thirsty. I went down to the kitchen to get a drink, and there, sitting alone in the dark, was my father. On the table, a gun. He was tired of the police waiting for the Ramsy to try something. He was tired of them terrorizing his children. He was tired of being afraid every time work came out, of something happening to us while he was gone. I sat with him for a while, watching him before he sent me to bed. These events and many more took place over a period of about 18 months. Then, as suddenly as it started, it was over. It was gone from our lives. The phone calls, the harassment, everything. For a long time, during and after the days of the Dr. Ramsy affair, I had recurring nightmares where I would wake up and find him standing over me in my sleep. It was a long time before I felt like a safe little girl again. Years later, I found out that when Dr. Ramsy called and told my parents that he was going to rape and kill me and then my sister, and that there was nothing they could do about it. I don't know what happened to him when he disappeared. I don't know if he was in a car accident, locked up in jail, or in a coma. But sometimes I wonder if it was over after I saw my father sitting in the kitchen in the dark that night. I don't know, and I'm not sure I want to know. If you like the video, you can support it by liking it and subscribing to the channel. See you next time. Good night, horror viewer.